The LA Kings have a big game against the Kraken as they look to stay near the top of the Pacific Division standings, and it's a Kings Fan Feedback Friday on this episode of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years. I'm also co-host of the Puck Podcast. It's a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 18 years and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. It is a Kings Fan Feedback Friday. We're going to get to your emails from the past week in just a second, but I did want to give you a quick preview of the Kings' next game. It comes up on Saturday afternoon in Los Angeles as the Kings will play game number 21 of the NHL season, and it's a fairly big game considering where the Kings are at this point in the season and where they are in the standings, as they will be hosting the division rival Seattle Kraken. LA coming off a 1-0 home loss on Wednesday to the Buffalo Sabres. First time the Kings have been shut out this season, obviously looking to bounce back and get some pucks into the net against the Kraken. LA checks in with a record of 10-7-3. They're third in the Pacific Division, sixth in the Western Conference, and 12th in the NHL with 23 points in 20 games. The Kings are 4-2-1 on home ice this season. Seattle enters this game with a 10-9-1 record. Seattle is sixth in the Pacific Division, although they are only 2 points back of the Kings in the standings, 10th in the Western Conference, and 17th in the NHL with 21 points in 21 games. They are 3-5 on the road this season. Kings are led by Anze Kopitar with 21 points, while Adrian Kempe and Alex Laferriere are tied with the team lead in goals with 9 apiece. Kempe is second in points with 18. Kraken are led by their leading point producer and goal scorer. That is Jared McCann. He has 21 points and 12 goals. Chandler Stevenson has 13 points, 12 of them assists. And defenseman Brandon Montour also 13 points on the season. In net, I would be shocked if the Kings don't return to veteran David Riddick. In for the injured Darcy Kemper. Last performance, obviously, against Buffalo was a loss, but only allowed 1 goal on 19 shots. He's 6-5 on the season, an .897 save percentage, and a 2.37 goals against average. At the under of the ice, it's expected to be Joey Decord in net for Seattle. He's got a record of 9-3-1, a solid .923 save percentage, and a 2.31 goals against average. The Kings saw pretty good young goalie in Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen in Buffalo, and Joey Decord is having a pretty nice season. So the Kings will face another young, pretty good goaltender in this one. Checking the matchup by the numbers, Kings check in 17th in the NHL in goals per game at 3.05. The Kraken are right behind the Kings at 18th in the league. They're averaging 2.85 goals per game. LA is 10th in the NHL in allowing goals per game at 2.94. Seattle right behind them, 11th in the league at 2.75 goals allowed per game. Kings power play is 29th in the league, 14.3%. The Kraken have the 23rd best power play in the league at 16.4%. And the Kings are 15th in the NHL out of 32 teams on the penalty kill at 97. No, I was right the first time. 79.7%. Seattle 14th in the NHL at exactly 80% on the penalty kill. So by the numbers, seems like a pretty fairly even matchup. The Kraken will not have their captain for this game and beyond. Their captain, Jordan Eberle, had surgery on his pelvis, which sounds bad. He's out 3 months. Also, defenseman Vince Dunn is on long-term injured reserve. So my big question going into this game for the LA Kings, will they bounce back from getting shut out in their last game? Or we're going to see them finish their opportunities? Will we see a bit better attention to detail? The energy was there in their last game. The chances were there. We do need to see the Kings, though, finish off on those chances. All right, it is a Kings Fan Feedback Friday, so we had a quick look at the game coming up on Saturday against the Kraken. And now we are going to get to your emails. Our first email comes from a new emailer. This is from Simone Mills. She says she's a fellow transplant from Hawaii. I may have mentioned on the show, I don't remember. Maybe she's referencing this. I was born in Hawaii. She says she's an everydayer, and she says that she is a hard left Kings fan and that she sits in section 116. All right. Well, hopefully, Simone, we can meet up at a game sometime if you're interested. So her email says, thanks so much for your analysis and fandom. Really enjoy the show. Also, I know you will find employment again soon as you are too good at what you do. Thank you. I appreciate that. I hope you're right. Regarding an email sent by a listener that referenced Blake Bolden taking over Daryl Evans' job. I'm not sure if you're political. I am. His email was really offensive to me on a couple of fronts. Number one, that Blake is black and using woke as any kind of adjective to describe forward thinking, forward inclusive thinking is a hard right adjective used by racists and idiots. Number two, the tone of his email, you could hear it loudly, that she is a woman who maybe wouldn't be able to fill that sort of position is equally offensive. Maybe skip these emails or don't use the word woke descriptor as it triggers people. We live in a blue state, county, and city. I know the Kings don't have control over your content, but the email really pissed me off. With so much respect. And again, that was from Simone. So if you don't know what she's talking about, we had an email last week from a listener, and I apologize for not remembering his name, who wanted to know if the Kings were, I'm paraphrasing here, if the Kings were going woke by bringing in a black woman, Blake Bolden, to replace Daryl Evans. You may or may not remember that Blake Bolden did a couple of games in between the ice as the on ice analyst for the Kings for a couple of games. And then Daryl Evans is now back doing that role. So he asked the question. I didn't really have an answer for him, but I will just say this. I will say I disagree, Simone, that anyone who uses the word woke is what was your racist or idiots. It's a word that's used in our culture. I will just say that I'll say that I didn't find his email offensive personally. Doesn't mean I agree with it, but we had an emailer a couple shows ago who said that I included too many negative emails, and I told him that I read the emails that are sent to me. I don't pick out certain ones to read. I try to read them all. If someone does send an email that is way out of bounds for some reason, which has not happened yet since I've been doing this show, then obviously I won't read it. I didn't think that email last week was offensive. It wasn't to me. Obviously, different people have different things they're offended by. I'm not easily offended. You asked if I'm political. I'm really not. I know that there are people that are very passionate about that. I have opinions on candidates and topics for sure, but it's not, I'm not as passionate about that as I am other things. I will say this, and I'm speaking for someone that I don't know. My guess is that the emailer saw someone that he had no idea who it was, had never heard of her, and asked a question. And I will just say what I said last week. Blake Bolden is qualified to do that job. This is not an example of someone who isn't qualified getting an opportunity, perhaps because she is a certain race or a certain sex. I don't believe that's the case. She is a scout in the Kings system. She played hockey at the highest levels for women. And frankly, I thought the things that she had to say while she was filling in were great. I thought she had some good insights and some good analysis. The only criticism I would have of her, and it's not really fair, it's reasonable, is that she's not quite a polished broadcaster, which she shouldn't be because she's just starting doing this. So we have another email who does reference this. She's doing these hockey exclusive games in Canada. I believe it's on Amazon. And she's a part of those broadcasts. And my guess is that the LA Kings are like, hey, she's talented. She's a member of our organization. Why aren't we using her on our broadcasts? That's my guess. I don't know that, but it makes sense. And they've decided to give her a chance and kind of try it out and see how she did. I thought she did pretty good. We'll see if she gets an opportunity to do it more in the future. I don't think they're trying to replace Daryl Evans. I just think they're looking to get somebody else included. And if they can use somebody who is qualified to get a different look, if you will, and let people know that they are an inclusive organization, I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. So that's my 2 cents on it again. But I do appreciate, Simone, your email, and thank you for sharing your opinion on that topic. We have more emails to get to. We'll do that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Those of us that live in Los Angeles, so lucky to have opportunities to go to so many live events, sports, of course, Kings, Lakers, Clippers, USC, UCLA. But it's not just about sports. There's also theater events, comedy shows, and concerts. And Gametime has tickets to whatever it is you want to see. They have a new feature called Gametime Picks. It makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams or events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff that show you only incredible deals on great seats. You can get Kings tickets for $50, and if you use the Gametime code, you can get them for about $30 for this weekend's game against Seattle. Just download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Our next email comes from Danny in Toronto, and he says, I never miss a show. You are the best Kings podcast out there. Thank you, Danny. I appreciate that. He says, couple of thoughts. I heard a fan talk about Blake Bolden. Wanted to share that I think Blake is very qualified. She does intermissions for Amazon's Monday Night Hockey. That's up in Canada. She knows her stuff. This is not a woke thing. And he says, I'm very anti-woke, so I feel confident in backing up Blake. She's a former hockey player and knows the game. I still love Daryl and Carlin, but give Blake a chance. My second thought is Quentin Byfield. We need to stop the center aspirations and put him on the top line. He's just not himself. If he played like this last year, he would never have gotten the contract like he did. And he says, a trade idea, Doughty and Q for Austin Matthews. I'm in Toronto, and the Leafs are winning without Matthews, and our defense is fine without Drew. Am I nuts? Yes, you're a little bit nuts on that one, I think. Yes, the Maple Leafs are winning without Austin Matthews, the leading goal scorer in the NHL last year. But they're not going to win the Stanley Cup without Austin Matthews. And certainly they might not win it with him. But I think there's no way they're going to make that trade. He says, final thought, I think the only thing we need to become a great team is converting on the power play. When Drew comes back, I really believe the power play will come to life. If Drew is traded to Toronto, then Matthews will fix our power play. Winky face emoji. P.S. If this Jekyll and Hyde continues for the Kings, we may have to change the good Kevin, bad Kevin to good Kings, bad Kings. And again, that was from Danny in Toronto. I don't know that Drew Doughty coming back is going to be the magic elixir to fix all the issues with the Kings power play, because I don't think the quarterback of the power play is necessarily the issue. Now, it couldn't hurt. He's not going to make it worse, that's for sure, and he can only help it. But I would temper my expectations as far as thinking that Drew is going to come back and it's just going to click. I think he can help it. I don't think he can completely turn it around. I think it's definitely something that's going to have a lot of people contributing going forward. Let's stay north of the border. This comes from Andy in Guelph. And he says, haven't emailed for a bit, but still listening regularly. I've not been emailing in because every time I see the Kings as a really solid team, they end up giving points away to lesser opponents. Been a frustrating start, but certainly moments of optimism. I try to keep it a perspective that if you told me that they would be in third place in the division after 20 games without Drew Doughty, I'd certainly take it. We're still in a good spot, but hard to feel comfortable with Edmonton, Vancouver, and Colorado pushing behind us in the standings. I think this team needs a shift up front. I love the offensive upset of Fiala, and I sometimes catch myself wondering if there is a one-for-one swap out there with an equivalent player that could shake things up a bit. Unlikely, and I still like Fiala, but sometimes it just seems off in the top nine. Thanks for all you do. And again, that was Andy in Guelph. And I've talked about this before, and I think that Danny in Toronto also references when you talk about Quentin Byfield, and I would disagree, Danny, about your point about moving Quentin off of the center position. First of all, I think that Alex Laferriere and Alex Turcotte have been good on the wing. Turcotte when he's been healthy on the top line. And Quentin Byfield is eventually going to have to play center, and he's going to have to go through these growing pains. And at some point, and I know you can't force someone, to be in a position, but at some point he's going to need to be one of the top two centers for the LA Kings. The money they've invested in him, where they drafted him, that does need to happen. I think he's going to be given every opportunity to fail, if you will. And I think he needs to be given that opportunity. As for the Kings being inconsistent, we've talked about it, yes. And I will agree that, and I've said it before, I think the two players that, I don't want to say they've got all the pressure on him, but I think the spotlight is on him. If we can get Quentin Byfield and Kevin Fiala going, it's going to be such a huge difference. And it was talked about from Andy that the top 9 seems off, and I think that's why it seems off. I think the Deneau line is fine. I think at times the Kopitar line is fine, but the Byfield line certainly it needs to be better. Our next email is from Scott in Vegas. He says, this team isn't making the playoffs. I say this 20 games in when we are still in a playoff spot. Yes, we had a rough 7-game road trip, but we played mostly bad teams. I say this because on paper, we weren't all that great to begin the season. When the season started, we all knew that our only hope was that Byfield would need to take a massive step forward, Darcy Kemper would need to return to form, and our old vets would need to stay consistent. Well, Byfield isn't good. Darcy's on IR, Doughty's on IR, and guys like Moore, well, I know the comment section always has a bunch of people saying we are all fair weather fans and we complain too much, but I challenge you to look up who we've beaten this year. If I'm correct, we've beaten Vegas once. Every other team we have beaten isn't good. You throw in the losses against bad teams as well, and we aren't making the playoffs. It's only a matter of time before all of the emailers turn to fire Blake by Christmas when this team is below 500. Eddie, do you really believe we're making the playoffs? Give us a silver lining here. And again, that was from Scott in Vegas. Well, Scott, I can't disagree with you about our schedule and who we have beaten so far. Against teams that are in a playoff spot, as we record this show, the Kings have a record of 2-4-1. Against teams that are not in a playoff spot, as we record this show, the Kings have a record of 8-3-2. So you're not wrong. We have beaten some bad teams, and we don't have a great record against good teams. Although I would say, in addition to the Vegas win, the win over Minnesota, I thought was a pretty solid win. But the schedule is going to get tougher, and the Kings are going to have to step up. There's no doubt about that. I mentioned Kevin Fiala and Quentin Byfield. The power play has to be better as well. There's room for improvement. The schedule will get tougher. Darcy Kemper is going to come off IR. He's not done for the season. I still think the Kings are a playoff team. Now, maybe they miss the playoffs, but I think they'll at least be in contention for a playoff spot until the end. And really, when you look at the teams they're competing against for a playoff spot, Calgary, Vancouver, Edmonton in the Pacific, Colorado, and St. Louis in the Central. I mean, there's no one there that is that much better than the Kings right now. Vegas is only 3 points up on the Kings for first place in the division. So it's really tight. It's really packed. The Kings definitely can't go on any sustained losing skids. They certainly haven't done that to this point, thankfully. And it's tight. Every game is going to be important for the Kings the rest of the way, starting with this game on Saturday. But I believe that the Kings are still going to make the playoffs. We have some more emails to come up. We'll do that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Get ready to tackle the NFL with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets when you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. The Chargers are taking on the Ravens Monday Night Football. I will be at that game. That's a game that you can certainly bet on. The Rams will be in action this weekend as well. So lots of local NFL flavor to get in on with FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com and join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Our next email comes from Brian. He's in Los Alamitos. He is a regular emailer, and he says, I really appreciate everything Jim Hiller has done up to this point, and I still think that this team should have hired a new, more reputable head coach from outside the organization just to have a new voice and new energy, and perhaps to send a message to players in the organization that they're serious about winning. Instead, Blake makes a budget-friendly coaching hire and acquires minor, low-impact players. Fogle and Janot are all right. I think Fogel's better than all right. But are these really the guys that are going to take this team to be a serious contender? No. And I think the rest of the team knows it too. This may be why they are playing uninspired and boring hockey. I hope this lackluster play is just the result of learning a new system, but I doubt it. In a way, I hope the Kings don't make the playoffs if it means Blake will not return. And maybe send Luke packing as well, because I'm afraid he would turn everything over to his buddy Bergevin. And what is ownership doing? Do they even care? Or are they just happy with a mediocre team that makes the playoffs? Frustrations are boiling over. By the way, I hear the Kings are looking for a new play-by-play guy. You may want to look into that. Thanks for another great week of shows. And go Kings go. Well, Brian, I think Jim Hiller's done a great job. I gotta admit, I wasn't high on the hire as well. I thought the Kings did need a new voice, but I think Jim Hiller's done a very good job. I have no complaints with the head coach, frankly. Maybe some minor complaints, and we do have an email on that coming up. But for the most part, I think he's done a good job. I mean, the additions that they made, like I said, they're spending to the cap. It's not like this team is being cheap. You talk about ownership. And look, they're not the most demanding ownership out there. I will certainly agree with that. We've talked about these things before. There's no media pressure to speak of in LA. If the Kings make the playoffs and they lose in the first round, I don't think Rob Blake's going to be back, but we'll see. I don't know that for a fact. But we'll see. Look, it's a pretty negative email. I understand it, though. I don't think that anything was necessarily unfair with what you had to say. But I would just say I'm a little bit more optimistic than you are about the Kings right now. Our next email comes from Oliver. He is in Roy, Utah. He says, I thought it would be prudent to wait until now to give my opinion on the Kings, now that we have about 20 games in the books. I have been pleasantly surprised thus far. It's funny. I had my doubts about Hiller, and without doubt, I was worried that a bad start would lead to a lost season. The positives have been the offense from the defense. Imagine if Byfield, Moore, and Fiala were playing up to expectations. Good to see Kempe starting to score some goals as well. I think you said goaltending has been slightly better than expected, and I agree with that, although Kemper's multiple injuries is not a good sign for a long season. Big Save Dave seems to be a perfect available fill-in, and his signing may go down as the Kings' best move of the offseason. Wait, never mind. Nothing is ever going to be bigger than getting rid of Dubois in that contract. The negative is obviously Byfield's slow start, to put it nicely. As frustrated as Kings fans may be, those calling for him to be traded is absurd. What likely do you think another team would offer for a struggling, unproven young talent? The best option is to try and develop him and hope for the best. If I'm honest, I still don't think the Kings have changed my opinion of their floor or their ceiling. I think the floor remains just missing the playoffs, and the ceiling is winning a first-round series. Go Kings, go. That was from Oliver in Utah. Oliver, I don't have anything to disagree with you on your email. I have to say, I think I agree with everything you said there. And I agree with you. The floor is just missing the playoffs, and the ceiling is probably winning a first round. I would agree with that. Scott in Buena Park, another regular email, says, first off, thank you for all you do. Always enjoy your content, especially the in-person interviews. Thank you. I watched your podcast every weekday on YouTube, and I must say the Thursday episode was a little harsh, especially from the fans in the comment section. I took offense to the opening line. Once again, the Kings show us why it's hard to get excited about this team. My experience may be different, but I see the Kings as a playoff bubble team, not a top-tier team. The roster built by Blake lacks elite scoring talent, so it has to be a team effort for the scoring. That can only go so far. Your recap of the game was spot on. It was just a lack of execution. Some players need to execute better, and you did a great job of pointing them out. I like it when you are critical of the team and the players, as I know you are fair and objective. It is just one game where the effort didn't win the game for us. If you look at both games the Kings played against Buffalo, I would say we should be 1-1 as the Kings stole the game in Buffalo. However, the once again in your statement was too much, as it implied the Kings have been letting us down all season long. We have a winning record, and for the most part, it's been a good start to the season. Now, if your hope is that the Kings are an elite team, I guess I could see the once again in your opening statement. Well, Scott, I agree with most of your email. I certainly didn't think the Kings were going to be an elite team. No, but obviously the once again that you had an issue with is once again losing to teams that they should beat. And I get it. I said it. They're not going to win every game against those teams. I get it. But losing to San Jose, losing to Chicago, losing to Buffalo, two of them on home ice. All three of them came after a win. That's what I mean by once again. The Kings have not won more than two in a row all season. They've had opportunities to string wins together, but they haven't done it yet. So that was my feelings, and that's why I said once again with the LA Kings. Yeah, they have had a pretty good season so far. I'm not certainly, trying to say they haven't had a decent start to the season, but I think it could be better. And frankly, I think it should be better. But that doesn't mean I think they're an elite team. I just think that there's some games that there's some points they've left out there, and I just would like to see them be more consistent. Our final email comes from Ed in Brea. He says, first off, I honored my bet last Saturday. I guess you left me high and dry after the game since you wanted to see me with the Steelers hat on. Okay. I was at the game against Detroit, and Ed was there, and he sent me a picture of him wearing the Steelers hat, and I said, come over to the press box area, which he's done many times before, and I'll take a picture of you sitting in the stands wearing your Steelers hat. He didn't come over. I guess he wanted to meet me somewhere in the concourse, and we just didn't connect. So, all right, Ed, whatever. You're off the hook. I saw you sent me a picture wearing the hat, so fine. He says, so after watching the Sabres game, I have to say the Kings will miss the playoffs. This is Ed's weekly, the Kings will miss the playoffs email. He says, you cannot get points. If you cannot get points off lesser teams, those points will cost you. At the moment, I have projected the Kings to have 85 points. That's not enough for the playoffs. Part of the problem is what I see is coaching. Hiller, to me, is overcoaching. All those line shifts are making the Kings having chemistry issues and no foundation. To me, the Kings have no identity as a team, and that's concerning. Example, on the power play, just be simple. Shoot the puck on goal, get a deflection, or pounce on rebounds to score. Right now, the Kings are passing the puck too much and getting pretty or creative. Sabres got their game-winning goal on the power play. Simple play, shoot the puck, goalie deflection, no chance for Riddick. Simple and effective. To me, our offense is our weakness because at the moment we do not have a true elite guy or a closer to seal the deal. It was shown last game. Keep up the good work. Go Kings, go. And that was it. Ed, are you going to send me an email when the Kings win, though, and say we're making the playoffs? Because it seems like after every loss, I get an email saying we're not going to make the playoffs. And look, you might be right. And you're certainly entitled to your opinion. I will agree with you with the power play. I think when something isn't working, you go back to basics. You make it as simple as possible. And I agree with you. They should be looking to fire shots from the point and looking to crash the net and screen the goalie. Keep it as simple as possible when things aren't working. I think there is a point to be made, as you said, that they're kind of looking for the pretty passes, looking for the pretty goals when it's not working, kind of go back to basics. So I will agree with that part of your email, but I don't think Jim Hiller's overcoaching. I think he's done a lot of great things or good things with the Kings. I will kind of agree that some of the he's doing a lot of line changes. He's doing a lot of changes to the lineup. Maybe a little bit too much. But I think overall Jim Hiller's done a good job. Thank you to everyone who took the time to send an email. This show is literally not possible without your participation. So I really appreciate everyone who took the time to send an email here on the Kings Fan Feedback Show. Don't forget, Kings Kraken, Saturday, 1 p.m. LA time. Game's going to be televised locally on the FanDuel Sports Network. You can hear it on the 710 ESPN app. I will not be at the game, as I will be meeting up with an old high school friend who I haven't seen in a long time, and is actually he's a big reason why I became a Kings fan, because he was a Kings fan. helped turn me on to hockey. And I owe my buddy Gary a big thank you for that, or else I wouldn't even be doing this podcast. That's for sure. So I am thinking about going to the Kings Jets game next Wednesday, as LA will be hosting the top team in the NHL. So looking to get out to that game, but won't be at the game this Saturday. So we'll not have a chance to meet up with any of our listeners. For you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up on Monday's show, we will recap the Kings game against the Kraken and preview Monday night's game in San Jose against the Sharks. Tuesday, we will recap that game. Wednesday, have a preview of the Kings-Jets matchup. Thursday, on Thanksgiving, my favorite holiday, we will recap that game and then preview Friday's Kings-Ducks afternoon game. And then, of course, on Friday, we'll recap that game and have another Kings fan feedback show. So that's the roadmap for the week to come here on Locked On LA Kings. You want to get an email in for next week's feedback show or send an email for anything, lockedoneddie@gmail.com is the email address, EDDIE. And you can always leave your comments if you're watching on YouTube in the comment section. We'd love for you to stay interactive with the show on social media, X, Twitter, and Instagram. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you, as always, for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday. And as always, go Kings, go.